They might talk about humor, music, film, books, football and box sets, exercise and maybe even food, trivia and sport, politics and health, sometimes well-being too. On the Life with Brian. On the Life with Brian.
Coming up on Life with Brian.
I was described by somebody in 84, 85 as the thinking woman's crumpet.
Be careful if you ever see somebody who comes up and says he was at university, just tell him, yeah, you remember him and he was a great lad and save you a load of hassle.
I was bullied by quite a lot of them because I liked Mark Bolan and I used to kind of dress up in kind of glam rocky clothes, and for not very long they made my life quite miserable until my younger brother found out, and yeah, they shouldn't have upset my younger brother. He bit one of them in the testicles.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it might be where you are. Mark here, loosely in charge of Life with Brian. As ever, Matthew is here with me, and so too is former Manchester United and Celtic ledge Brian McClare. How are you both?
Very, very good, thank you, sir.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, Brian, you've been on your travels since the last time we convened, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I've been in mainland China, which was an incredible experience. Yeah, saw probably the most important things you'd want to see in China, Tiananmen Square, the wall that they've got there that's fairly impressive, and the terracotta warriors.
Fantastic. And as always, we've got a special guest. He's a singer-songwriter who has been in the music business for 40 years, both as a solo artist and with the Commotions in the 1980s. It's a big Life with Brian welcome to Lloyd Cole. How's it going, Lloyd?
Not bad. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. You've been playing golf this afternoon, haven't you?
I was at the driving range. I had an absolutely... can we swear?
Yes.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, a fucking disastrous session.
Yeah.
Golf has really had it in for me the last few years.
Really? Well, I think you're not the only person that's played the game and would think that. It must be bad if you're struggling.
If only you started playing when you were younger.
You know where I used to live in Glasgow, right?
Yeah, but you've your parents not. Did your parents not work in a golf course?
Yeah. That's where we lived. We lived at Glasgow Golf Club. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were out. You had a chance to go out every day then.
Yeah, and it was brilliant, especially in the summer. You know, you could play until about 10 o'clock at night. What, that one day of the summer? Every time I go back to Glasgow, the weather's fantastic, and I keep saying, "Oh, I should move back to Glasgow." And my mate Billy Sloan, he's like, "Don't even think about it. This is the one good day of the year." Well, I saw a quote from you saying if it wasn't for your missus, you'd be living in Whitby or Fife. I would have been living in Whitby before Brexit. I'm pretty sure Whitby is full of Brexit bastards. I know, you give a distinct possibility of all that. I think so. So, yeah, if I was back over there, I'd definitely be north of the border. Yeah, for sure.
You're our first ever transatlantic guest, Lloyd. So, just for the benefit of everybody, whereabouts are you speaking to us from?
My home in Western Massachusetts, which is about 3 hours north of New York and about an hour and a half west of Boston.
Cool. Yeah, but the best thing about it is you're only a 11-minute walk to the pub.
I'm excited. You've been doing your research. It was trivia.
That's critical to me, Lloyd.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, honestly, everybody in this whole town that I live in, everybody drinks and drives except me.
And you lived in Glasgow.
No, I just, wherever I'm going to live, I need to be able to stagger home.
That's the best way, isn't it?
That's unusual for America, though, isn't it? Because, I've been there a lot and stayed with friends, and quite often the nearest pub's about 40 minutes down the highway, which is never good. So you've obviously found the right part to make home.
Yeah, I live in a small town called East Hampton. It's only 30,000 people. But it's vibrant, there's lovely people. and a couple of decent golf courses. And, the nearest airport's the same as it would be almost anywhere. You live in the middle of New York, it still takes you a couple of hours to get to the airport when the traffic's bad.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke to Tony Curran, who spends a lot of his time in Los Angeles, the actor, and I mean, you've been in the States since the late 80s, haven't you? So are you fully acclimatized now? Because I know Tony was still struggling to find Buckfast and a few other things that he needed to exist.
I still need to buy Marmite in bulk, and you can't get proper tea over here unless you shop around. So there's a few things. I mean, I've been here 30-something years. I married an American woman. My kids grew up here. I'm here through inertia. If I wasn't married and I had kids, I certainly wouldn't be here. But there's a lot worse places to be. 30-something years, and I still don't know what the holidays are, and I still don't care about any of the sports.
Well, I won't ask you about politics then. Well, maybe I will, but I'll let Brian come in.
It's a complete joke.
Yeah,
I mean, but it's not much better over there, is it?
No.
I mean, you're 12 years of that rubbish. Now you've got this poor fuckers in power getting blasted from every side because they're trying to clear up 12 years of mess.
Is that why you've never taken US citizenship? Is it you've never felt at home there?
I'm at home here, but I couldn't take the Pledge of Allegiance. No.
Brian, I'll let you. It's your show. I've chirped on enough about the US.
It's just interesting there, Lloyd. Just that you're alluding to, you can't get a decent cup of tea or any kind of tea in the States, which led me to a little bit of thing that I found out today, that when you're back in London, do you still go to Fortnum and Mason's for £82 a person tea?
I don't think I've ever done that other than once with Morrissey in 1985. And I'm not even sure if I can remember we ever did it. I just remember he suggested it. No, I don't know where I would go for a cup of tea in London these days.
You did say that's where you went more than once.
Well, I can't believe it was more than once. But
this is before he changed. This is before he changed.
You know what? I mean, looking back, there were signs. I remember one time we were walking about. And he goes, "Lloyd, do you think you make enough money?" I said, I'm making a lot more than I ever thought I'd make. So I'm all right. He goes, "I don't think I make enough money." And he's living in Oscar Wilde's flat.
We could talk about Morrissey every time on the show. We've got a few tenuous links, haven't we, Brian? Postcards.
No, it wasn't really about that kind of thing. It was,
it's a shame. But I mean, still, I don't think we need to discount the joy that the Smiths gave so many of us, and some of those early Morrissey records are lovely.
I agree. I stand by that. Brian tends to
I don't disagree with it because what it is if you can separate it from what happened in the music and all that, because it's not just him, and just say, well, you're actually doing yourself a disservice by all of a sudden saying, well, you're judging what someone is now or has been in recent years with regards to memories and experiences of the past. So one of the things that I loved about when I was listening to you in another podcast today, Lloyd, was you were talking about your songs and your lyrics, and that your view was that however people listen to them should be their experience and should be their sort of idea of what they might mean to them at that particular moment. And that you had also come across people saying to you, well, I think those lyrics were about that at some particular point, and it gave you a different insight into the sort of things that you wrote in the past. Do you think all artists are like that, or are they more precious about?
No, a lot. In fact, one of the things that disappointed me was hearing David Bowie telling somebody that this song of his was about this specifically, and if you didn't think that, then you were misunderstanding the song. I think if you write a song and somebody understands it in a different way to the way that you might have intended it to be understood, then you're not a very good writer, are you?
Well, no,
I mean,
because it's like, well, it's the same kind, I've got the same kind of view, whatever it is. If you write something or you put something out that's available for people, it should be for them to interpret whatever way that they want to and give them joy,
yeah,
sadness, or melancholy, or whatever else it may, whatever else emotion it is. And it's great that you can have that influence on them, good, bad, or indifferent.
yeah. I mean, basically, if we restrict ourselves to the idea that the message that's coming from any piece of art is the intention of the creator, we limit our enjoyment of everything. I think we could talk about this all day, but once something's out there, if you think of, I think the best example is sculpture. You have a sculpture in a park, and the sun's in a certain position. The sun's moving around all day. It's a different sculpture, even if you're standing in the same place as time passes. You walk around it, it's a different sculpture depending on how the shadows are falling. And then different people, taller people see it in different ways, shorter people see it in different ways. People from different cultures will see implications based on the way that their culture understands, like posture, for example. We certain gestures in certain cultures represent certain things, and that it could be completely different in another culture. So when we do music around the world, to expect everybody to understand things the same way in the first place is ludicrously foolish. But it's very liberating to think that you put something out there, you do your best to make something beautiful, and then people can do with it what they like.
We'll come back to music shortly, Lloyd. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your childhood and growing up in the Peak District, and how it came to be that you started supporting Chelsea, especially being within range of both of the Manchester clubs. And I guess Brian Clough's Derby in the 70s should have been somebody who took your eye.
Yeah, in retrospect, a big part of me wishes that when I decided not to support either of the Manchester clubs, because the fans that lived near me were horrible. I wanted nothing to do with them. I was bullied by quite a lot of them because I liked Mark Bolan, and I used to kind of dress up in kind of glam rocky clothes. And for not very long, they made my life quite miserable until my younger brother found out. And yeah, they shouldn't have upset my younger brother. He bit one of them in the testicles.
Typical 70s football hooligan behaviour.
Yeah, so that was everything was nice after that. But yeah, so I just thought I didn't want anything to do. I was a big George Best fan when I was 7, and then when it came to choosing a different team, because I decided I didn't want anything to do with those two. Chelsea were a super glamorous team at that time. Peter Osgood was dating Raquel Welch. Chelsea were the King's Row. And so I ended up being a Chelsea supporter, and then that was that, really. But yeah, a part of me wishes I'd chosen not to be in Forest. I'm a massive Clough fan. Derby is the other end of Derbyshire from where we're at. We lived at the Cheshire and Manchester end. So Derby wasn't really... It didn't feel like from around here. We were definitely Stockport, Manchester people.
I find it funny that you didn't like the violence of the United City fans, so you supported Chelsea, who at that.
I know. It wasn't the violence in terms of the culture. It was what they were like in the town I lived in. They were horrible.
I know. I read that you once went to an Old Firm game. I mean, you spent time in Glasgow. We'll come to that later, but you were quite disgusted with what you saw there. So I mean, I imagine going to football wasn't a very enjoyable part of your early life.
I stopped. No, I mean, I loved football, but being at the match never did it for me. My dad took me down to Stamford Bridge for my 9th birthday, I think, and that was wonderful. We beat Sunderland 3-0. Got to stay in a hotel for the first time. And that was very exciting, first time. And my dad used to take me to see Chelsea at Sheffield Wednesday, Sheffield United, United City, Burnley, wherever Chelsea were playing. My dad was a Liverpool fan. So he was a pretty great father. So I used to enjoy going to the games until I really could see what was going on. And I remember going to see Chelsea when I was studying in London, when I would have been 18. And the fans were just, they were horrible. I mean, all they were doing was hurling abuse at our team. for not anybody passed the ball sideways, they started hurling abuse at them. I just thought, you know what, I quite like watching football on TV. So I watch football on television. I have no desire to go to the match.
Days you can associate with Brian following Celtic not that I'm saying Celtic had a bad following, but just that generation, that era of going to football, you were taking your life in your hands quite often, weren't you?
Well, not so much for going to the games, but I do remember the atmosphere at a lot of those grounds when I first came to England, like going to Stamford Bridge when you had the shed at that time, and I always felt it was like grim, it's not like the lovely stadium it is now, and a probably good fan experience with regards to the seat you've got and the view you've got. It just seemed to me, and one of the other things as well is that at that time the way that it was built, certainly the ends were quite far away from the pitch, which in a way might have been quite a positive thing. But my experiences of playing early on were very much of like that, where it was more. I mean, there still would be criticism with football fans going to games, and quite rightly so, because they pay good money to go. But there, it was almost about that was your whole enjoyment, irrespective of whether the team were playing well, whether the opposition were playing well, what the score was.
I guess when your music career sort of took off, Lloyd, in London, did you rub shoulders with a friend of the podcast and Brian's old mate, Pat Nevin? I imagine there was a bit of your kindred spirits maybe at that time, eh?
Always felt like we should be, but I almost saw nothing of him. I think if we met, it was only once or twice. Yeah. I think I used to just didn't he used to write columns in some of the papers and what have you? Yeah. Maybe he still does. But no, I didn't see much of him. I can't honestly think of. I didn't really mix in the football community.
Well, not many people did then, isn't it? It's funny how people always say now it's almost like if you're not interested in football, then you're a bit weird. But I mean, it was almost the opposite then. I mean, you could count on one hand the amount of people that you knew that said they liked football and music, for example. Very much in that era.
I think coming from the sort of glam rock and punk rock, which is what I grew up with, football was considered the antithesis of sort of artistic. But I always loved football, so it didn't bother me. The Commotions all loved football as well, to lesser or greater degree. We always travelled. There was always a football in the bus. We played in Houston one year, and we were playing football in the parking lot outside while we were waiting. We arrived there early on our bus, and we kicked the ball up high, and we saw a few sparks and what have you. And then we got into the gig, and the power was out completely, and we all had to stay completely stunned as if we knew nothing about what could possibly have put the power out. so yeah, I mean, yeah. I still enjoy football. I watch Premier League every week. I'm a Chelsea fan, but I'm more interested in is it going to be a good match than whether we win, which is just as well these last few years.
Yeah, you obviously haven't been. There's a lot of America you haven't been taken with. I imagine sport might not be one of those subjects. You're not an NFL man or MLB or.
My son likes the basketball, so if he's watching it, I'll watch it. I don't mind it. My friends at the bar are all big Boston Red Sox fans, so I don't mind baseball, but I follow football and golf, and I don't really have much time for any other sports. It takes all the time I've got. I started cycling a few years ago. I admit to even having watched the Tour de France the last couple of years, I thought that it's a great kind of eye-opener to, when people say, oh, golf, or gosh, the most boring sport to watch on TV. Or Americans would be the same thing about football. They go, oh, soccer. They go, oh, man, it's so boring. There hasn't been a single goal. So basically, any sport that you know anything about is interesting, and any sport that you don't know anything about isn't.
Yeah, I'd guess so the Tour de France probably trumps most of those sports. I like
Yeah.
it. I watch it, but it's
I watch it as well, and cycling has been a big kind of a lifesaver for me the last 5 or 6 years.
You're listening to Life with Brian.
You know, if you've got lonely and played together, there's something about those songs will sound 100 times better than if you did them with a different musician.
That I'm never happier than when I'm in the same pub talking the same bollocks to the same people that I've been speaking to for 30 or 40 years.
A lot of my memories, the really good ones, have been populated and polluted with your image in shorts, Ronan.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
I believe you both attended the University of Glasgow at the same time in the early 80s. Is that right?
Were we there at exactly the same time? I was there 82 and 83, 81, 82, 83.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
exactly the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, but Lloyd was further ahead because you'd already been to university in London, hadn't you?
Yeah, but I wasn't ahead until I had to start again. So I just
you started again, did you?
I just did I started again with 2 credits. So I'm still, to be honest, I'm still a bit angry that they haven't given me a bloody honourary degree after all these years because I have 8 credits.
They've not given me one either.
Yeah, so you.
I think you're probably more notable alumni than I am. Yeah, I was there for 2 years at the same time. Yeah.
Well, we can
81 to 83. Yeah.
Now going there.
No, I wouldn't accept an honorary degree. I just think, oh, that's nonsense. That. It depends with people who have got no academic ability whatsoever. They get these sort of things and for ridiculous reasons. So.
But you've got more reason than most to claim one, haven't you? What were you there? 2 years? You did.
I was there for 2 years, but then the best thing about being at university was just coffee and snowballs.
Yeah, coffee and snowballs.
Yeah.
Where did you go? We used to go to the Grosvenor Cafe. That was our spot.
The which one?
The Grosvenor Cafe on Ashton Lane. That was where we used to go.
I just stayed in the refectory and just on the top of the hill.
All right.
And
what did you study?
I was doing maths, physics, and chemistry, statistics.
That's what I should have been doing.
Not really, because what you were studying gave you the inspiration for something that you've been good at for a long time.
Well, I was only studying that because it was what I wasn't good at the time. When I was at school, I was a maths kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still. I mean, that's one of the things doing all this stuff around with this, the mathematics of the actual music of the creation of sound is quite interesting.
I love solving mathematical puzzles. That was the thing I quite enjoyed, but I don't know whether it's fortunately or unfortunately the football became more to the fore. I was at Motherwell when I was at university playing part-time,
right?
So I didn't have the opportunity apart from the coffee and snowballs during the day to experience student's life as it should have been as a student, because I was training twice a week and I was playing games at on the Saturday, mainly for the second team. So I had to behave myself, really, So,
did you play for the university as well?
I did in a 5-a-side game once, but
okay.
I wasn't allowed to do that. But another reason why as well is that because the lad who was taking the team at university was the son of the coach at the football club I was at. So it would have been a bit difficult for me to play. Without him having been honest with his father, So he was a good Catholic boy, so he had to be able to tell the truth, so he couldn't be in a position of lying to his father, Otherwise, he would have got into very much trouble with his father and the church at the same time, So I played once a 5-a-side game, which give you a little kind of, you might not bump into many people where you live now that were at university at the same time as you. But I bumped into somebody a few weeks ago, and Matthew was there at the second time, where a guy was pissed off with me because I didn't give him enough deference because he allegedly played in that one game I played at, and one game I played in 42 years ago, right? And he was pissed off with me, and he left in a huff. And I thought, oh well, I can't please everybody, right? 2 weeks later, I went to visit Matthew in Liverpool. We're in a pub to watch Celtic playing, and the same guy appears in front of me saying the same thing, right? The same thing. And I'm like, well, me, what happened, you know? And this is the thing that maybe it tickles me knowing this, right? So he's about, I know you're a little bit older, but he's about the same age as me, 60, 61. And he said he was so annoyed about me dissing him that he went home and took his posters off the wall. Right?
I can vouch for all of this because I was there.
So I went back at the end of the game. I'm not having this because I wasn't rude to him. I wasn't doing anything. I went into the room that he was in, and I went up and I put my hand out and I said, "Listen, thanks very much for saying hello. I'm sorry you were upset for whatever reason. I didn't, whatever it was, I apologise if I did something to upset you." And he went, "Oh no, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have done what I did, and it's down to me." And I didn't take the posters off the wall.
We got to find this guy, Brian. He's probably in that pub quite regularly. I want to bring him on and get his side of the
So you be careful if you ever see him something. He comes up and says he was at university. Just tell him, yeah, you remember him, and he was a great lad. And
Yeah.
well,
save you a load of hassle. Right?
Yeah.
You studied music, did you, Lloyd?
No, I studied English and philosophy.
I think there's a parallel universe somewhere where you go back to finish your studies, and Brian can, delight you with the maths and statistics side of things that you probably would have enjoyed more back then. But they happy days though. I mean, I imagine that the studies were just a part of the life. There was a lot. Obviously, the music scene in Glasgow there must have been pretty lively.
The music scene was great. The university was great. I had a particularly great English teacher who was really, really helpful in me getting an understanding of what I wanted to do with my own writing. I don't think, without Paddy Lyons, I don't think I'm here. It was a great help. And he made it fun as well. I remember the very first thing we did. He said, "Read this chapter, okay? It's narrated. It's a scenario. There's 6 characters. It's narrated by character A. Okay, you rewrite it. Narrated by character B. You rewrite it. Narrated by character C. You rewrite it. Narrated, and we all had to rewrite the same story, narrated by the different characters, to understand how it would be a different story. Very similar to how a song could be a different song depending on who's listening to it. A story is a different story depending on who's telling it. I actually just watched that. I watched that TV show, Disclaimer. Did you see that?
I've not. No.
Yeah, Kate Blanchett, and it's and that's the basic whole essence of the show is the story is told by different people through the series, and the first one that you're told, because it's the first time you've heard it, you think, oh, that's the true story, and then the more you watch, the more you realize that no, that's the story told by this person, and then you see the story told by different people. It's very well done. Anyhow, that was Glasgow Uni was awesome. I met Blair, the keyboard player. I put a sign on the Queen Margaret Union wall, and we started working. And Neil, the guitar player, was a friend of a friend, and the three of us started playing music while we were at university, and we left because we had a career. Yeah.
But it stood you in good stead then, really, for what you wanted to do. Because I read once that you once said that you spent a lot of your child studying to be a pop star, and I guess you could say that was probably time well spent.
I certainly spent. I used to read the New Musical Express in its entirety Thursday morning every week, and one of the things I thought was quite funny was when we started doing music, I really felt once we had a little bit of success that I was pretty well prepared for everything, because I really had bloody followed my heroes. I read everything. I watched everything that was on TV. And when I say I was studying I was basically sort of like apprenticing, because those were my heroes and I knew everything about them. So, emulate your heroes is a valid directive if you want to do something well. Just figure out what your heroes do the same thing, and if you've got your own voice, it'll come out. Anyhow, I could pretty much do everything that was on the sort of MO for a pop star, except in 1984, this thing called MTV started with music videos. And I thought, oh shit, I didn't nobody told me anything about this. And our videos are terrible. I mean, embarrassing, because it was, we weren't interested. I almost felt a bit cheated. I was like, well, I couldn't study for this because they didn't exist. And so, yeah, I did feel like I had studied, but there was a bunch of things came up that I wasn't prepared for, and I wasn't really prepared for that life. I don't think I behaved particularly well when I was very well exposed. I think I'd sound, in retrospect, I listened to myself in interviews, I sound like your typical whiny asshole complaining about being famous.
You mentioned about like being in a music video in 1984, 85 sort of time, and performing in front of the camera, and you're not getting that education. You don't know anything about that, even though you watch your heroes. Again, in preparation for this, I watched a couple of your early Top of the Pops performances. Again, you would have grown up watching Mark Bolan and the Sex Pistols and whoever else on Top of the Pops in the 70s, when you were, again, perhaps dreaming of being a pop star. What was the experience like when you first went on this iconic pop show, which is probably a good barometer of, say, yeah, we've actually made it. I watched one of the whole episodes, and the lineups are absolutely stellar. It was
so exciting that I could barely speak. To be on, I mean, it must have been for you, Brian. It must have been like playing Celtic Park, playing at Old Trafford. Fuck, I mean, that's what Top of the Pops was like. I mean, I was. There was before I had a child. It was the happiest I'd ever been at a single moment.
Yeah, but when you say that, so were you somebody that just felt natural on stage and singing it, and things like the interviews and the press that went around it was slightly a distraction? I mean, you said you look back on your interviews and you feel a bit embarrassed and what have you. Would you have done things differently with that hindsight? I mean, was it just something you weren't interested in? Because we spoke about...
No, I was absolutely. I mean, my two ambitions were to be on the cover of the New Musical Express and to be on Top of the Pops. And we got both of them on our first record. So my problem after that was, what do I want next? What else is there to want? I've just had the two things that I wanted most in life. And it, the next 10 years were almost more difficult than the following 20 years. The last 20 years have been about looking after my family, making a living, and just being grateful that I still enjoy making music. But 84 to 91 to 95 were difficult, because I realized I wasn't David Bowie. I realized I wasn't going to be a mega star. I was just a medium star. And I realized painfully that I had quite severe limitations in what it is that I could do. I stretched it pretty far, but there were limits. Whereas it seemed like Bowie and Prince, probably my two biggest heroes, were completely limitless. I was not. There's stuff I can't do. I can't sing as well as those people. I'm not a virtuoso musician like Prince. So finding what to want and how to get it was a challenge.
But you had quite a good grounding in terms of your pop heroes, didn't you? I mean, I read that you skipped off school to buy a Sex Pistols album, didn't you? And you worked at a pub next to a record shop. I mean, this when you moved to London, you had all this. You had great access to the industry that you were so keen to be part of, didn't you?
I mean, yeah. I mean, when I was before I was a musician, I was interested in music, girls, music, a bit of maths and a bit of English. But yeah, I mean, music was everything. I spent every penny I had as a child on buying records. And when the new David Bowie record came out, when the new Bruce Springsteen record came out, or in the case of the Sex Pistols record, it was massively exciting, and you had to have it right away.
Yeah, I just think it's that era, like Mark said about the Top of the Pops and the interviews. It was that sort of golden era for pop stars being pop stars. And now I don't think you get that access to the people that you admire as musicians. I mean, you must have, you had an enemy wanting to talk to you in various music publications, and you probably had to really think about these interviews and think about what you were going to say, because they made such an impact on people's lives. So there was an extra added pressure, really, wasn't there, to the industry? Whereas now, I guess people in music don't really feel they need to do that.
No, now it's more about what you could do, and especially Morrissey is a good example of somebody who did this particularly well. I think actually is you could build a mystique. Morrissey's his stage name. He's Stephen, and he grew into being that character, and I don't think was ever able to take the mask off later. But he created this charming character through his appearance in interviews, making outrageous statements, dressing in a certain way. I mean, Men with Flowers on Stage was actually quite a bold statement in 1982, 1983. So the idea of being able to create this kind of mystique and this thing that people would want to put your picture on their wall, that was kind of what it was about. And now it's more about social media and people getting access to the real you. So I don't think there's if there's a grain of mystique left in my persona, I don't know what it might be. But a large part of my job description these days is being on Facebook and Twitter, letting people know when I've got records out, letting know when we've got concerts. And yeah, I kind of hate it, but it's just that's what we do. Thankfully, I for a while before Musk, I enjoyed Twitter. I enjoyed bantering about football and politics. But that's a big part of my job. And a few mornings, I'll get up and I'll get my email and I'll get to work on whatever I'm working on. And before you know it, it's lunchtime, and that's my entire morning done just dealing with that side of my career. And I get quite angry sometimes. I haven't even had a shower yet, and I'm still doing this stuff. It takes a lot of time.
Do you think that you just saying there, Lloyd, that do you regret in a kind of little way that you didn't create a character or a persona when you first started with the commotions, like several other people have? You talked about Bowie, for example. So Bowie became probably his most famous with the Ziggy Stardust, and you alluded to more, and several other people have that's what they're like, and they have different names, don't they? You've always been you, and you've always been you all the way through, haven't you? There's never been anything different.
No, and no, I don't regret that. I never felt like I needed a persona because so much of my music is songs that are narrated by characters other than myself. So even though it's me presenting what it is that I do, it's absolutely not me in those songs. I would say at least 75% of the time. I mean, you necessarily have to throw a bit of yourself in when you're doing something like method acting to try and find the right words for a character to use. But I don't write songs to get stuff off my chest very often at all. I don't write songs to talk about my depression or my pain. I see things that are interesting to me and I write about them.
Previously on Life with Brian.
how many funny people are from Edinburgh? Who's funny for Fife? Right? I'm just saying.
Chuck, you'll back me up on this. Anything deep fried tastes great.
It's an amazing thing now, so many years later, to sit back and realise that we were part of something that perhaps will never happen again in the music industry.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Very much enjoyed your last album. Been listening to that all day today, particularly The Idiot.
Oh, thank you.
Which I listened to, and I listened to something else that you spoke about in that, and it was something we used to do when we were growing up. All of us were growing up. There wouldn't be very often. Well, maybe you would. I'm not sure. I've not done an audit of it, but you didn't always have a lyric sheet in the album that you'd buy. Sometimes you would, but not. So you'd have to listen to the record and sometimes work out or try to work out, because even now some things come on and you go, was that they saying what I thought they said all at that time back there? But so I listened to that. So I thought, oh, I've listened to that. No, I like that, and I heard a couple of little things. So then I looked up, which is brilliant for me now that you can look up the lyrics.
Yeah.
And then when I looked at the lyrics, I thought, wow, this is even. So when I was listening to it, I didn't know what it was about. I just thought, this is a great idea of talking about what might have happened in 1975. Now, what I've subsequently discovered that you've written it about some people.
Well,
or you wrote it about some people, maybe.
Yeah,
it doesn't change the enjoyment of the song, to the. But
no, and I was, one of the things that I loved when that record came out is I was talking to a couple of younger journalists talking about the record, and they were talking about The Idiot, and they had no idea about this scenario with Iggy Pop and David Bowie going to Berlin in 1976, 1977. And so even though it's pretty, I would say it's not the most subtle of songs. I think I mentioned 3 or 4 Bowie or Iggy songs in the lyrics. There's some pretty strong pointers to could this scenario be Bowie and Iggy, but it still doesn't have to be. That's one of the things we were talking about. It doesn't. That's what's lovely about music. You can hear it, and you can find something in it, a way to enjoy it. I feel very lucky if I'm able to provide some beauty or something in people's lives that enriches their lives in the way that music enriched my life. If I can do that. I honestly don't mind how it happens. I still very much just like the idea of, I try to make beautiful stuff, and I hope people will enjoy it.
What did you think about the Camera Obscura song?
It was lovely. How could I not love it? I've got an instrumental version of it that I asked them if they would give me. That very rarely, when I'm in a good mood, I put on before I go on stage and kind of come out pointing fingers. But yeah, it was lovely. They're lovely people, and they were kind enough to contact me before it came out to make sure I didn't dislike it and I didn't have a problem with it, which is very sweet.
And you've been doing a lot of stuff with handwritten lyrics and handwritten couplets. How do you feel about that? Is that something that's a necessity, or you enjoy doing it, or giving other people pleasure in a different way? For example, when I was looking at it today, I would quite like to have in the background here a little frame. Now that I've just found it now, I'll probably buy one, of couplets or favourite lyrics written by you in your nice handwriting and signed by you.
But there you go, there's an endorsement.
It was a COVID thing. In March of 2020, the tour I was on was shut down. We didn't reach break-even point on that tour, so we lost money. And I came home and didn't know what we were going to do. Didn't know how long it was going to go on. And I just started looking around to see what people are doing, and I realized that a few people like James Grant was doing this. Quite a few people were selling these things, and so I thought, well, I should give it a try. I can't say that I love the fact that I had to do it, but at the same time, I did feel a little stupid that I'd never done it before, because there was a pretty massive demand for them. And it's not the end of the world to write a few lyrics out at the end of the night and generate enough money to pay off your car or something. It's quite nice to be able to do something like that to supplement what would have been the normal forms of income. But at that time, there was no, almost all my normal income streams were nothing. So it was necessary. And so I also started this thing called a Patreon page, which is basically access to behind the scenes stuff that you can get from me. I started a thing called the Notebook Project, which I've been wanting to do one way or another. I thought maybe it was going to be a book. And basically I got all my notebooks from how I wrote my songs. And I got the old notebooks and I basically found all of the process of the writing of the songs through the pages. Took an awful lot of time and energy photographing every individual page, getting them as close to chronographical as I could, and presenting this as a sort of ongoing online project. I'm still only about halfway through it, and it's been popular and also kind of enlightening to me. It's been quite nice to look back and go, well, I know I've never been a perfect writer, and I know a lot of what I've done has been more about hard work than inspiration and brilliance. And one of the things I saw was that I almost never took an idea and made it worse. I almost never found something great and screwed it up. I almost always made it better. And I quite often you'd see in a song, oh, you're taking it in this direction. And then you'd see the notes a few weeks later go, oh no, that was a terrible idea. Thank heavens you didn't carry on in that direction. So I feel like that was something that I thought would be nice to share, because I could share it without saying, oh, this song is telling this story or whatever. It rather than saying what I might have been intending to do with a song, I could actually show all of the raw material that I put together to make the songs. And so, yeah, I'm a good editor is my conclusion. I very rarely had a good idea and let it go. In fact, there are some songs that have come out in just the last 5 or 6 years that have been in notebooks for 20 or 25 years, waiting for me to finally find a way to use a certain phrase, like the Loudness Wars. I finally did that about 5 years ago. That was in my notebook 30 years ago.
Is it proving still to be a popular aspect of what you do? People,
it is, but not to the extent that it was. I think when people knew that we were locked down and they knew that they could buy one of these things and that they were actually helping me pay my mortgage. I mean, going bankrupt was a real possibility if we hadn't have found these income streams, because the other streams that I have are really trickles that don't add up to much these days. As you all probably know, the business model for people who are not megastars doing music is the exact opposite of what it was in the 80s when we started. We used to make an awful lot of money from selling records back in those days, and we used to actually go on tour, and sometimes we would actually lose money on tour because we felt like we were promoting the records and we were making so much from the records. It's the exact opposite of that now. Without touring, there is no serious income.
I heard something today that I'd love to be described as this. You were described as a melancholic optimist. Do you think you'll ever have a song called that?
No, it's not a great title, but it's a lovely thing to be to be described as. My favourite one from the early years, and we had so much fun in. I mean, even though, like I said, I'm embarrassed by my, complaining about being famous stuff, but we did have some fun with it. I mean, I was described by somebody in 84, 85 as the thinking woman's crumpet, which
surely that's not changed.
I think it may be slightly less of an intense feeling these days. But yeah, I mean, we did stuff like when we put out the press release for our second album. On our first album, we filled the press release full of lies. We had that Stephen and Lawrence had met in prison. Obviously, none of us had been to prison. But it was just fun. Still none of us, not yet. I don't think any of us have quite made it there yet. But on the second album, I don't know if you remember Blair, the keyboard player in our band, but he was the least rock and roll person you could imagine. He had a beard back then when nobody had beards. He was way ahead of his time. His dress sense was absolutely tragic. So tragic, actually, that I think after a while we just said, you know what? It's Blair. Let's just let him do his thing. So I remember one time, can you imagine in 1985 coming to a band meeting and going, I just bought these French flares. Nobody was allowed to wear French flares in 1985, but Blair turned up wearing them one day. So anyhow, Blair was the least rock and roll person in the band, and absolutely the least likely person in the band to actually be a singer. So we put in the press release for the second album that on this album, the vocal duties are split between Lloyd and Blair. We sing about half the songs each on this Easy Pieces. And it was brilliant. I mean, we're doing all these interviews. And also we added 5 years to all our ages in it. So by Easy Pieces, I said I was 30 and Neil was 32 and Lawrence was 29. And so we'd be doing all these interviews going, and the people would be saying, yeah, Blair sounds just like you, doesn't he? and then we were doing the women's magazines back in those days. I remember talking to like Women's Own and things. And they go, God, you're awfully young looking for 29, Lloyd.
Something you're quite a fay with, Brian, isn't it? Lying in interviews. Something we'll touch on at the end of this.
Not so much lying. With
embellishing.
It's time for the quiz. And while I'd like to say that these lurch from the sublime to the ridiculous, there's certainly more of the latter than the former. So, in honour of Lloyd's classic 1985 hit, in which he sings about a lost weekend in a hotel in Amsterdam, both of you have to tell us whether the following people are Ajax Amsterdam footballers or are people after whom streets in the Dutch capital are named that also happen to be where one or more hotels are situated. See, I did warn you that it was ridiculous. If you think the person we give you is an Ajax player, say Amsterdam. But if you think they're a person with a street named after them, with a hotel on it, say Amsterdam. There'll be 5 goes each, like a penalty shootout. And hopefully you're both still with me.
Brian's holding his head. I've never seen him.
I
wouldn't. Lloyd's probably wondering what he's let himself in for here. So
I don't know anything about any of this, Lloyd. Just in case you think I'm party to this, it's all a complete mystery to me as well.
This is about the 30th one we've done of this. We've done 53 episodes. This is about the 30th quiz, and they seem to get more and more impressive or bonkers, depending on how you look at it. And I think Mark disappeared for a couple of weeks. I couldn't get hold of him. Now I know why.
He's been in Amsterdam.
Yeah. Okay. And
double pneumonia.
Yeah. I must. Before we start, sincere apologies in advance to all our Dutch listeners for the pronunciations we, and especially Matthew, are about to butcher.
I never read these in advance, so the pronunciation is always part of the fun of it.
Okay, so if you're happy, we'll ask you to kick off, Lloyd. And your first one is Michelle Creek. Is that Amsterdam or Amsterdam?
Amsterdam.
Unfortunately, you've missed your first penalty. That is in Amsterdam. Michel Creek won 2 league titles and a UEFA Cup with Ajax between 89 and 94. And he's since been a coach with a number of clubs, including Inter Milan. And he was number 2 to current England ladies manager Serena Wiegman when she was in charge of the Dutch women's team. So 0-0, and Chucky's up next.
Yeah, I knew that about the women's team.
Oh, really? Okay.
Did you know that Michael Creek was an Amsterdam player?
No, I would have said Amsterdam.
Yeah, okay. I get the feeling this could be the first 0-0. Have we had a 0-0 so far? But
no, we haven't.
We call them no hitters over here. It's a great 0-0 is it's a great match.
Yeah, okay. Let's go for our first ever no hitter. And Mark sprung this one on me, and I can only apologise. Brian, your start of a 10 is Peter Cornelzoon Hoofd. Peter Cornelzoon Hoofd.
Amsterdam.
Yeah, you're not going to tell me you know that, are you?
Is it anywhere near the Rijksmuseum?
Well, hang on a minute.
Oh, do you know what? I think it is.
Oh, he's showing off now.
I think it is exactly where the Rijksmuseum is.
Yeah, it's false. His name is often shortened to just PC Hoofd these days. He was a poet and writer, and the street named after him is home to lots of expensive designer clothes shop and hotels.
Oh, well, of course I would know that, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we got to ask how you know the streets of Amsterdam so well.
I can't tell you that because I couldn't get any of the rest of them right.
Yeah. All right, Chucky, you've taken an early lead. Lloyd, your second go is Nicholas Witsen.
Is that with the W?
It's with a W, yeah.
Nicholas Witsen.
Witsen.
Mm-hmm. I'm going sham again.
Correct. Amsterdam. You've pulled it back to 1-1. Nicholas was a 17th, 18th century statesman who was head of the Dutch East India Company and held the title of Mayor of Amsterdam 13 times. The street named after him also contains the hotel similarly named after him. So there we go, 1-1. Back in your court, Brian.
Yeah. Next up for you, Chucky, is, well, it's a nice easy one for me to get my tongue around. It's Fred Grimm.
Amsterdam.
Yeah. The old method of shutting your eyes, which you were there. You were shutting your eyes and you whacked it down the middle and the keeper dived out the way. It's true. Fred spent most of his playing days at Ajax as a backup goalie in the 80s and 90s, but does have a cupboard full of medals to show for it. He was most recently the head coach of FC Emmen before getting the bullet last season. I assume you mean the sack, Mark, and he wasn't shot.
Yeah. No. Just the Spanish archer. All right. So, okay, Brian, you're back. You're 2 for 2 at the minute. Okay, Lloyd. So back over to you to try and catch up. And your third one is Ton Pronk.
On Pronk. Well, so far I haven't had a single clue, and I've been guessing. And I know that I've got a trivia team at the pub, and when we're guessing, we should just say A for all of them, because there's a better chance if we keep going back and forth. If we're really just guessing, we should say the same thing each time, because there's a better chance.
Yeah, if only Brian had done that with his penalties.
Yeah, there's a better chance that you've probably not given me 4 of one and 1 of the other. You've probably done 2 and 3. So if I say the same each time, probably the minimum I'm going to get is 2. So I'm going sham again.
Well, that's a great explanation of your method, Lloyd.
Of getting it wrong.
But you've got it wrong again, yes. So Tom Pronk was a defender with Ajax back in their late 60s golden period and won 19 caps for the Netherlands. He later became chief scout at the club and is credited with discovering Jari Litmanen and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, no less.
All right.
So, Brian, 2-1 up, and you've got a chance to extend your lead.
Yeah, still 2-1. And back to Brian. The third one is Albert Kuip, C-U-P, Kuip. Cape.
Sham. Amsterdam.
You're following Lloyd's technique, are you? Just sticking with the same corner.
I've gone back and forward, haven't I?
Right, yeah, okay. Well, whatever you used, it worked. It's Amsterdam. It's false. Albert was one of the leading painters of the Dutch Golden Age, especially in landscapes, and you can find the 4-star Sir Albert Hotel on Albert Kuipstraat.
Very nicely pronounced, Matthew.
Nice.
Okay, so Lloyd, you really do need to get this one because
I know, but I'm out.
You're
That
struggling
doesn't matter.
here.
We still. Mark spent far too long on these questions.
Yeah, we're going to go to the bitter end on this. So, Lloyd, your fourth one is co-prince.
How do you spell that?
C-O, and the second name, Prince, is P-R-I-N-S.
Well, I've made my bed. I'm going to lie in it.
Oh.
Sham.
Oh, dear. No, it's true.
If only you'd gone the other way. If only you'd gone the other way, then you'd have.
Well,
I've gone the other way. Yeah, exactly.
Do I start again?
At least you're sticking with it. Okay, so co-prince, as well as being an Ajax striker in the 1960s, perhaps more famously, he is one of the Allied team in the film Escape to Victory, in which he plays the Dutch prisoner of war, Peter van Beek. And sadly, he died of a heart attack during a match in 1987 when he was 49 years old.
Okay,
So we're cheating news. Thanks.
Yeah.
So we've had somebody that was shot and somebody that died of a heart attack. So I don't think there's much pressure on this, Brian, but you can still show off about your knowledge of Amsterdam. Your penultimate pen is Jan Evertsen.
Amsterdam.
No, you missed. Evertsen was a 17th century Navy admiral who fought in the... Yeah, of course, yeah.
Everyone knows Jan Evertsen.
You remember him now, don't you? He fought in the Anglo-Dutch Wars, although his achievements were dogged by rumours that he was a coward. You'll find the Schotel Amsterdam Hotel on Jan Evertsenstraat in the west of the city.
Okay, so you can't win. In fact, you can't even draw level now, Lloyd. But as I said, we're gonna see this through to the very end. And your last spot kick is Ruud Geels.
Geels, but rude. Well, I've said it. I'm going sham. So you gave me 4 players.
Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to this.
Like I said, you would have been perfect almost if you'd gone the other way. And
the other coin flip. But the logic was obviously bad because you did give me 4-1.
Yes.
I would have assumed it was 2-3.
Yeah, you assumed there was logic, which is the first mistake. Ruud was a member of the great 70s Ajax and Netherlands squads and also had success in Belgium with Bruges and Anderlecht. He was a 5 times Eredivisie top goal scorer and one of only 2 players to play for all of the big 3 clubs in Netherlands. And he did, in fact, win the European Cup for Feyenoord in 1970 against who, Brian?
Celtic.
Against Celtic, that's right.
2-1.
Yeah, so...
70. So no names from the lovely teams in the 70s that we might have actually known some of the players.
No.
None of the names you'll know any of them.
No. Well, actually, interestingly, you might know this one, Brian, and Matthew, I'll let you round that off for Chocky.
Okay, yeah. I'm just looking through. I'm glad I've got through these without any obscene pronunciations. Brian, you finish the game off with Dick Van Dyke.
It's got to go for Amsterdam.
Yes, true. I don't know what that makes the score, but it's true. Yes, Dick Van Dyke did play for Ajax. Obviously not the actor famed for his authentic Cockney accent in Mary Poppins. This Dick was a striker who scored in Ajax 1971 European Cup final win over... Ryan?
71 Olympiacos.
Close.
Panathinaikos.
There you go. So... And that was quite a comfortable win in the end. But I mean, we've got to admire Lloyd's, sticking with it through. I would say thick and thin, but it was just mostly thick.
I have to say, Mark, I know I say this every time. I think you've excelled yourself there. Yeah. I mean, that really takes some. I could just imagine you with the A to Z map of Amsterdam sprawled on your kitchen table, and guidebook with the hotels there, and
it was pretty much exactly like that.
Your dedication to life with Brian knows no bounds.
Okay, so with the quiz done, before we go, there's just enough time to subject Lloyd to the quickfire focus on feature, similar to that which you would have seen in Shoot and Match magazines back in the day. The one where they asked the players who their favourite band was or what was their usual pre-match meal and so on. As usual, we'll stick with some of the questions that were put before Chocky when he was doing his thing for Celtic and Manchester United. So, are you ready, Lloyd?
I am.
All right. So, full name?
Lloyd Cole.
place and date of birth.
Buxton, Derbyshire, January 31st, 1961.
Favourite current footballer?
Ooh. Favourite current footballer? Oh, it's Foden.
Favourite away ground?
Well, definitely not fucking Main Road. Favourite away ground?
What happened at Main Road?
They used to sing, "You're not fit to wipe my ass." Horrible people. My manager's a City fan, and his company is called Main Road Productions, and it still pains me every time I write it down. Favorite away ground. Stade de France.
Stade de France. How many O levels did you get?
9.
What don't you like about yourself?
What do I like about myself? I don't like the shape of my head.
Oh, that's interesting because Brian's answer was his legs. Have you ever been mistaken for someone else?
I occasionally get mistaken for a pop star from the 80s. For somebody else. No, not really, but a lot of people think that I look like Jimmy Carr. Or like, I used to. And
I must admit, I thought that you did, when you were younger, you definitely had a Jimmy Carr look about you. Who would you least like to share a jacuzzi with?
Giuliani.
Or the dye might come out in the water.
Everything would come out.
Oh dear. Let's move on. If you had to go to a fancy dress party, who would you go as and why?
Who would I go as and why?
You can't say Jimmy Carr.
I think the only time I hate Halloween. I have no time for it. But I've been over here for so long. Sometimes my children were into it. I think the only time I ever dressed up as anything was I went as a gangster with a violin case. So I would go as Al Capone.
And what were your ambitions for 1984-85? For example, Brian's answer was to win something with Celtic and make up for previous disappointments.
Sorry, what were my ambitions?
Yeah, for 1984-85, this is just as you were about to embark on this.
I think I told you already. My ambitions were to be on Top of the Pops and to be on the cover of the New Musical Express.
There you go. Well, I mean, you both managed to make up to fulfill those ambitions, didn't you, Brian? It took you maybe a year or two later than to win stuff with Celtic, and Lloyd, you were bang on the money. Like if you'd been asked that in, the summer of 1984, then you must have been on Top of the Pops 2 or 3 times, I guess, but by the end of that year.
No. Yeah, twice. I think maybe we were on twice with Perfect Skin, but we were never on again. I mean, people remember that record as being more successful, but only the first single was a hit. The second 2 were both flops.
You looking forward to the gig in Buxton?
I am looking forward to this one. Yeah, I hadn't actually been to play in Buxton. Born there, the hospital that I was born in isn't there anymore, but the Pavilion Gardens was always there. When the first gig I ever went to was in the Pavilion Gardens. My parents took us to see, do you remember Chicory Tip, son of my father? Yeah, they took us to see Chicory Tip. That was the first gig I ever went to. And so I played the Opera House. I must have played it now 3 or 4 times in the last 10 or 15 years, but never played it back in the day and the first time I played it, I was on stage, getting ready to do the sound check, and I looked down in the room, and there's my dad, and I wasn't expecting him, and And yeah, I said, oh, you and your fucking surprises. Because my dad loves like turning up unannounced. I said, you and your fucking surprises. Right behind him was a guy with a video camera from the local newspaper. So yeah, I am looking back. It's a brilliant gig. Every time I played there, it's been banging. So yeah, January I'm playing bass again with the band. You can see this. I'm getting ready for practicing the bass up here. Getting ready to play with the band in January.
And just one last thing, and clearly it could be a lie when you were talking about the press release from the second album. Did your dad have a motorbike and a sidecar?
Yes, he did, and my mother did give me her motorcycle jacket when punk rock hit in 1977. I said I want a leather jacket. She said, "Well, I've got this one that I used to wear when I was in the sidecar." Yeah.
Did it do the trick?
It was brilliant, honestly. It was the best kind as well, because it was a straight up zip, not one of those diagonal ones. It was straight up, and obviously I ruined it by putting safety pins in it. But it was glorious.
Brilliant.
Well, Lloyd, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join us today. Have you got, other than the gigging Buxton, of course, what have you got going on or coming out that we can plug for you?
Well, right over here, what I'm doing is trying to create a drum sound like nobody's ever heard before. So that's what I'm doing over here for my next record, and probably for the next month I'm going to be starting work on that. At the same time as practicing bass in the evenings to play in the gigs in January. We're also playing the concert hall for Celtic Connections in Glasgow, and the Barbican, which amazingly is sold out in London, and a few other shows around the country in January. And then, yeah, it's just going to be trying to get another record finished whilst trying to look after an ancient house here. Both my arms are killing me from doing gardening yesterday.
No,
Maybe that's why your golf wasn't very good.
Possibly, but it also might just because I have the golf plague right now. And it's really, somebody's got it in for me.
Okay.
And so say all of us.
Yeah. Well, I'll just direct everybody to your Twitter account, which is at Lloyd_Cole. And I'm sure you'll be sharing details of all the stuff that you're going to be doing over the next few months. Brian, Matthew, thanks as always.
No, thank you, and thanks, Lloyd. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Oh, yeah, thanks so much for having me. That was fun.
Thank you, sir. Been a pleasure.
I'm going to Amsterdam in a couple of weeks. I can't wait to find some of those hotels.
If you need a hotel recommendation, I've got loads. And to you out there, thank you very much for listening. As always, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode and Life with Brian. Every little helps to spread the word. Follow us on X if you haven't deserted Elon's vandalism project just yet, at Brian McClare Pod. And we'll be back very soon with another one of these. So we'll see you then.
Life with Brian, talking films or music. Life with Brian, talking TV and food. Life with Brian, talking trivia and exercise. Life with Brian is different every episode. Life with Brian, talking politics and football. Life with Brian is different every episode. Life with Brian, Life with Brian.